It's Song Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show, folks. So glad you can join us here again on Song Talk Radio. If you're new to all this is the show where we talk about songwriting. Basically, we all share tips and tricks and things we've learned along the way. And in the end, hopefully, we all learn at least 3 new things on how to write better songs each and every show. During the show, you can always send us your thoughts on anything we talk about here on the show to feedback@songtalk.ca. I am your host tonight, Phil Emery, and my usual partner in crime, Neil Modi, is away jamming with his band. So we have a longtime friend of the show, one of the main guys behind the excellent Song Studio Workshop series, songwriting professor and amazing songwriter with frontman of the Jitters and writes for TV and all that film and all that stuff, and a very fine house guest as well. Blair Packham is here. Great to have you back on the show again, Blair.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's always good to be, always good to chat with you about songs or anything else.
Awesome. Yes, it's been far too long. And tonight, our guest is Greg Wyard, a Toronto singer, songwriter, guitarist, and bass player who has been diligently working at his craft since he was just 10 years old. Thanks for coming on the show, Greg.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, this is your second appearance on the show, I believe.
Yes, I was here about just under a year ago, I think. I had another song called Working Like a Charm. So
yes.
Thanks for taking a break from working on your stuff since you were 10 years old to join us.
Yes, I'm so busy working constantly since the age of 10, I had to stop myself.
Before we get started, a couple of things. Don't forget about our 2023 Songwriting Challenge to write a song in a mode you are unfamiliar with. And if you need more background on modes, you can stop by songtalk.ca/songwriting challenge 2023 for a page of mode resources. What are your thoughts on modes, Blair?
I don't really understand them. I mean, I do. Greg can explain, I'm sure, because he's a very educated musician, and he's been working on modes since he was 10. No. I mean, as I understand it, the modes are the different notes of the scale. Tell me, Greg, if I'm wrong. So different notes of the scale. So it's just a different starting place in the key of C, for instance. Starting on D would be a different mode than starting on C. And it has a name that I can't remember. Is that
Darian? Yeah. By the way, I didn't know anything about this until I was explained in university, and it was if you use the white notes on the keyboard, you can find all the modes starting. C is Ionian, D is Dorian, E is Mixolydian, but it's the intervals between the notes. So the major scale is tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. And then as you go up, the intervals change, and you can write a song using those different intervals, not just major or minor, but also these sort of sharp 4. Gives a different feel to the song. That's
different feel melodically and harmonically, or
yeah, because the chords are different. Like what is major and what is minor, and then where the diminished will hit, it will be different too, I believe.
Yeah, I'm a songwriting professor. I should know all this, but I never have to teach it because I leave that to the music teachers.
It's one of those. I mean, it's the thing you could just do and not even know you were doing it.
Right.
If you put a tone to it, it's that's what it is. But it's many singers just do it and it sounds great, and you just go, "That's great." Why? And you don't want to explain why.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I'm one of those people. But so that's my experience with modes, Phil.
And Greg, are you a big modal user?
I like the F sharp sometimes in the key of C. Da, 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 da. Like Maria, I just had a girl named Maria. You could say that would be the sharp 4.
Right.
And I don't remember which mode that is. So there you go. See.
Lydian. I believe that is Lydian.
I think you're right.
That is Lydian. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've been looking at Lydian for my song, and it's kind of neat. I think it's in Lydian, but I'm not sure. But
then again, you could say the song is in the key of G, but you're playing on the 4th chord, which is the C, and then you're playing the F sharp that's in there. So it's all but perspective, right? Because if in the key of C and then G, then anyway, it can get really technical and.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a stretch, but the idea is that by taking this challenge, you'll expand your songwriting brain a bit, So,
right, and you'll hear different sounds, and I think that totally makes sense. I my default, because I'm lazy, is to say, well, Paul McCartney never needed that, and so forth, and he didn't. But he's an example of what Greg was talking about: somebody who did stuff like that naturally, and didn't need to name it, But stretching your musical vocabulary is always good.
Yeah, and it's also good to get out of your own habits because it's really easy to fall back on those. Right. But you can send in your songs. We've been getting some great songs sent in. So you just send them to feedback@songtalk.ca. They don't have to be fully produced or even finished. You just include your chords and perhaps a bit of the process, and we'll play them on usually 2 or 3 shows dedicated to our listeners' challenge songs. They're really fun, really great stuff. And of course, some sad news just the other day. Sinead O'Connor passed away, just 56 years old, and has had a very troubled life. And it's but what a talent.
Yeah. Very troubled life. Her 17-year-old son committed suicide, I believe, last year, and she said at the time she was going to have difficulty going on from there, and she was sort of rescued in a sense. But I don't know her cause of death, but certainly that added to what was already a troubled and controversial life in certain ways. And but a fearless artist and somebody who who really took a stand for things she believed in, and had a great voice and wrote some great songs. So, somebody I admire.
Yeah. I had just watched the documentary on her about 2-3 months ago, and it was fascinating. I mean, I had no idea how young she was. Just 20 really when she sort of got signed. So she started very young, but a troubled upbringing, I think, in a very Irish Catholic, strict upbringing that sort of shaped some of her feelings about the Catholic Church and what, how she rebelled, I think, later on. And but that first hit she had, I can't remember the name of the song. It's like, I don't feel no.
Oh, Mandica. That's I love that.
I just know it by sound. When I heard, I thought, I love that song. I love that weird angular melody.
Great.
And the fact that it was, because everybody thinks of the Prince song.
The Prince song, Nothing Compares to You.
Nothing Compares to You. But that was the one that stood out, initially. And yeah, she was such a bright spark, and she made a couple of blunders, I think, alienating people early on, and it, I more power to her for speaking her mind, but I think she found herself in some tough times, through that, through life, so.
Yeah.
Amazing, talented, brilliant musician, right, deserved all the credit that she got as a performer. And a songwriter too. She was a.
Phil, I'm curious if you've ever had Chris Burkett on the show.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Chris co-produced Nothing Compares to You.
Yes.
Right. By Sinead O'Connor, along with,
was it Nick?
I've forgotten who he co-produced it with, but anyway, he co-produced that and
was it Nick Blagona?
No, it wasn't Nick. It was, I've got the name on the tip of my tongue. During one of Greg's answers, I'll suddenly blurt it out. So, like, what? But anyway,
I can look it up while you're speaking. No.
Oh, okay, yeah. Chris certainly had some interesting stories about Sinead and about that experience.
Yes, yeah, he was, and quite a great artist in his own self, and very very positive energy, and
very, yeah.
And as positive as Sinead was troubled, I think, in some ways.
That's a good way of putting it, I think, in fact. Yeah.
Yeah, he certainly, it was a great show. That was back in the before times, and we'll link to that in the show notes. All right, let's get on to our guest, Toronto singer-songwriter Greg Wyard. Latest song, Suddenly Everything's All Right, presents a refreshing blend of sounds, reminiscent of Phil Collins infused with the timeless charm of Motown. With heartfelt lyrics and a captivating melody, the song takes listeners on an exhilarating journey of love, discovery, and unyielding optimism. The spirited rhythm section, characterized by an infectious piano arrangement and jangly 12-string guitars, creates an irresistible groove that will have audiences swaying and singing along in no time. And we'll take a quick little listen to it now.
Took forever to find. You were hiding in plain sight. I kept on walking on by. I knew I had to make it to you. If I had to cross quicksand, if I had to cross time.
What a great tune. We'll listen to the whole thing later on. So, since you've already been on the show once, Greg, I want to sort of throw something out. Do you think think about how your songwriting process has changed over the years? Do you think you've changed your process maybe in the last 10, 15 years, Greg?
Yes, I think trying to simplify things. I was always very resistant to conforming. I think I remember because that's funny. I met Blair like back in 2000. I used to go to a lot of these song workshops, tape the tape, this kind of stuff, and I bring my stuff. And I think it was Amy Sky or somebody. I remember saying you should write everything 8 bars, 16 bars, like very rigid, just this sort of formula, I guess talking about a hit song, what makes a hit song. And I had songs that have like weird length bars and extra bars of 2 here. And, I'm thinking, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stick to my guns and change keys, put guitar solos in and stuff. So I was a bit resistant. And I mean, it depends what you want out of it. I mean, everybody wants to be, you want to find that balance between a hit song and not compromising what you enjoy. I'll get a bit of both. So I think I have finally sort of tried to at least be aware of that the structure, the even structure. And this song is, I guess, indicative of more of that. It's very few chords. It's just 8 bars, repeated. And not like I wrenched it into that. It kind of evolved into that. But I think that is a change. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think that's really interesting, Greg, because it doesn't sound like that. It doesn't. No? I mean, it doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like prog rock. It doesn't suddenly sound like Gentle Giant or something like that. But it doesn't, like, at no point. I often tell my students, nobody complains if you use the same structure as other songs, because the students always want to resist, anything that's normal, quote unquote, and because they're young and they feel like, well, that'll make them seem not as special or something. But I think that. I don't think anybody cares as long as the song makes them feel something. I feel this song does that. I feel it's a successful song in that it makes me feel something. I get what you're trying to say and I dig it. So it's kind of like, I'm not thinking, well, it's only 8 bars and then it's another 8 bars. Like, what are we doing? So, yeah. So it's interesting you say that.
Well, I think, I've heard it said that you can write songs for other songwriters who appreciate all those wacky little sort of inside jokes but you don't want to alienate the average listener, because most people don't listen to music that way. They listen to it with sort of their soul. They don't kind of sit there and go, oh, that's kind of an interesting rhyme scheme or,
right.
Yeah. Now, there's some people who do, and I'm not saying there's no one who does, but
Yeah.
it's...
There are lots of people who love puzzles, and if your song presents a puzzle of sorts, which I think some do, I think that's great for those people. There are lots of people, I would argue most people just want to be moved by a song. Like when they hear something new, especially when it's from a friend, my argument is they really want it to be moving so they can turn to their friend and go, oh my God, that's great. I love that. Rather than going, yeah, nice. sort of being unenthusiastic. I think people really want to be moved. I think that's why we watch TV and movies, and we want to feel something. And songs do the same thing, or can do the same thing. And the risk being clever, let's say, as opposed to just clever, is that you alienate people because their brains kick in and they start having, and then maybe it starts to seem like work. I'm not sure.
Yeah. You need something to draw them. Like I'm not going to stop trying those clever songs once in a while.
Yeah.
But this is a way perhaps of bringing them in. I don't feel like I compromised anything in the end with this song. Like I'm happy with it. I don't think I should have added anything to it. I put a solo in it and I thought, oh, that's a bit, even that's a bit risky these days, you know. But it just screamed for solo. Like, you know, it didn't make sense to just do a first bridge and then not have a solo, you know.
You're so musical too that like it's not like the solo is going to be lame. In my opinion, the solo is going to be great, and it's going to be another interesting part. So you know, it's not like a solo for a solo's sake. It's a solo because you felt as the creator it needed it there, which I think is a good reason. Not because like, oh, now I can show them how I can, wheedle on the guitar. That's a mode we didn't talk about. By the way, the Wheedlian mode.
The Wheedling mode, yeah. I look at the solo as it's very similar to the melody. It's really just the melody is da, 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 and the solo is da, 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 da. It's just a variation on the melody. So it's not really it's not a finger tapping solo or
a look at me sort of solo.
Yeah, and, I mean, the song doesn't sound simple. I mean, melodically, it's actually quite it's quite complex. There's lots of movement to it. Versus a lot of songs which today have very small movements and very limited ranges. Yeah. But that's also a style. I mean, that could also change in 10 years. In 10 years, maybe people go, oh, that's all the old fashioned, and everyone will be doing
10 years, 3 years, 5 years. Yeah.
3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, things change pretty quickly in terms of audience taste and so forth, but often things come back. It's hard to say. It's funny, Greg, I think I'm older than you, and I think that if I'm older than everybody, by the way, but I think that
everyone in the world.
You mentioned I'm
1,000 years old.
You mentioned Phil Collins in the description of the song, and I like in my world at the time that I came up, that would be a totally uncool reference. I don't think what was uncool when I was sort of coming up is relevant now. Like I think, in other words, I think mentioning Phil Collins it's apt because your voice actually, it is kind of like a Phil Collins interpretation of Motown.
No, it's funny you should say that because I've often thought the same thing. I've always thought the people I mentioned I sound like don't sound, cool enough. But I think maybe because Phil Collins is recently retired, or maybe there's a demand for his voice again, or and I'm not going to sound like an authentic original Motown artist. I don't think I'm kind of doing an homage to one.
Right.
So I've got the four to the bar snare in the chorus. That's with the tambourine. So I thought Phil Collins was a good reference because he does it the way I would do it, I suppose.
Right.
But when you say the uncool thing, I had thought of that too, and I'm curious I'm sort of throwing that bio out there to see if it sticks or see how people respond to it.
Yeah, I really think my take on it is not important because
I'd love to hear it.
Well, no, but I mean, I think Phil Collins for people like from my era, not that I'm that old, but the 1920s, we had flappers, and I was a bootlegger, and I used to drive boats across Lake Ontario filled with whiskey. Those were the days. But no, I'm not that old. But nonetheless, I think that Phil Collins is a reference that I would have probably avoided And not because he's not great, because he is. He's undeniably great. But it's funny because I'll mention things to younger people and I'll say, "Oh, I don't know if you want to say that," and they're like, "Why not?" It's people of my age think that's cool, and I have to adjust all the time.
Well, they don't have the reference to it. It's just music. Like, people, there's a real bit of a resurgence of Bee Gees now because people are realizing how many amazing songs they put out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And they would have been an uncool reference. They would have been totally cool in the 60s.
Oh, yeah.
Less so perhaps in the 70s, and by the 80s, a bit of a joke maybe. And yet, people who weren't around in those decades don't care.
Yeah, they don't have any of those.
This whole Spotify thing, you have to put on who do you sound like, who you're referencing, if you're doing ads. So you're forced into this thing, and I'm having a hell of a time really coming up with, artists that are, it's difficult.
Have you included Neil Finn? Because I've always thought you sound like Neil Finn.
Oh, yeah.
Without sounding exactly like him. I mean, arguably you sound more like Phil Collins, but to me, you share a lot, and your songwriting shares a lot with Neil Finn and Crowded House.
Oh, thank you. And these artists I just listen and love, so it's in there. Sure,
and it fully is a compliment.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much.
But, from a marketing standpoint, like people say, I don't want to sound like anyone. Well, it does help if someone is just looking at, like not hearing music, but looking at your media. It helps them to sort of say, oh, you sound like Tool, or you sound like Taylor Swift, just because they'll go, oh, I like Taylor Swift, or I like Tool, or whatever it is. As opposed to, there's this, for a while, people were saying, oh, we shouldn't categorize music at all. And that's just, it's a nice idea. It doesn't mean you can't like lots of different kinds. But if you really love Tool, then you might like other stuff that sounds like Tool.
I mean, I do think there's a danger with over-categorization, the fragmentation of music. When you have different genres that pop up that sound a lot like, you have one genre of hip-hop that sounds a lot like another genre, but the hi-hats are faster. Therefore, it's a completely different genre. It's like, no, it's not. It's just the same genre with faster hi-hats. That's all. But for some reason, people are like, no, but that's this and not that. And I find it frustrating. And I also think it's a danger because I think that it's the man, if I may, my old hippiness coming through. It's big marketers, it's easier for them to market to you if something is, if you're more targeted. So, if you only like rap songs that have a beat in the key of A minor, then, you can find a Sirius XM station that plays only that, Yeah.
Well,
and I think it's bad. So.
It's like dance music, they have like BPM ranges. It's like, oh, it's this kind. It's like techno between 120 and 135. Right. And if it's 160, then it's drum and bass, or, it's all these... different categorizations.
Well, when I put the song on Spotify, there was so many genres. I actually did screenshots of the drop down list and printed them out and put them on the floor because it was like maybe 80 genres that I could have been part of, and I was just like, I think I picked singer, songwriter, rock, singer, pop, or something. I picked 3 because you can only pick 3. And there's no way to do it. But you have to. You're sort of forced on Spotify to categorize yourself.
And all of us,
it might have big implications if you get it wrong. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. The world will blow up. All of us have faced that question, though, from our friends and family and fans. What kind of music do you call this? And you sort of, I don't know about you guys, but I always go, well, I don't know. And I sort of hem and haw. The one time I very firmly said it's pop music to somebody, the woman I said it to got really offended. It's not pop music. I think this is music like Bob Dylan might make, or the Beatles, or the Rolling Stones. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's pop music in my world. I guess she meant at the time, I don't know, Taylor Swift. It didn't sound like Taylor Swift, but she really had a thing against pop music. So therefore I might have alienated her.
But it means popular, right? Yeah. So at some time, these things were, and still are in some ways, popular, and that's what it means. It's,
and I feel, for me, I mean pop music like anything that isn't jazz or classical. Well, not narrowing it down for her very much, I have to say. But yeah, if somebody asks you how would you describe your music other than the Spotify, other than Phil Collins reference, how would you say it? Greg?
Oh, now you mean, yeah. I cite my influences, I suppose. I'd say like you just said, Phil Collins, Peter Gabriel, Sting. I like all these artists. If you like those, that's the things I sing mostly. Don Henley, I love his voice. It's not saying I sound like them all, but that's who influenced me. So it's probably in there.
Right? Yeah, it definitely is in there. I would agree. Is Crowded House an influence?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I used to love Split Ends, back in high school, and then saw Crowded House in '88, I think, when they played in Ottawa, when they were in their 30s. With the original drummer, Paul Hester. Yeah. So and then saw him about a month ago, and he still sounds fantastic.
That was at the Budweiser stage.
Yeah. He sounds, and his son sounds like him.
Yeah.
It's like his voice. He passed his voice on to his son exactly.
And his son does this whole. When I saw them at Massey Hall, his son opened. This is 5 years ago, maybe, but he did a whole thing. He did the looping thing, so he would play a drum groove and then get up and play the bass and then get up and play guitar. And it was very tedious, I have to say, because it took he only played like 5 songs in the opening set because it took so long to get it going. And then he'd sing something, and his voice was remarkably like Neil Finn's.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't. No, he wasn't doing that at this show. Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe
of course, there's 2 sons now. There's the guitar player son and the drummer son.
Right. Liam and I don't know the other one's name, but yeah.
Anyway.
So, Greg, let's get back to songwriting. What was the process of writing this latest one?
This was one of those dream things. When the chorus was actually, when you record something into a phone, that suddenly everything's all right. That was literally one of those, which I love when you get those, because then you got something you didn't really try for, right, and then I put it away. Yeah, it was like I wake up and I've just been singing a song. I don't know if you get that, but you hear a finished song in your head and you're enjoying it, and then you suddenly wake up and you suddenly go, oh my God, that was a song I've never heard before. Oh, I gotta sing it. And then as you're singing it, as you're singing the verse, you forget the chorus.
I know, it's true.
Like, it's so annoying. You had the verse and the chorus, and you get one. So I got that chorus, and I just thought that was, and it just sounded like an upbeat sort of song. And then it's like, what, I had to keep this suddenly everything's all right, because that just fit the word. So now I've got to find, but what do I write this song about? Sounds something like something positive. It's like a bit like everything's going to be all right. The Bob Marley 3 little words kind of vibe. And then it was just and that Motown beat. And then it was just like working backwards. Finding something to write about. And then I thought, a relationship where you meet somebody and they've been there all the time and nothing happened. And then suddenly everything happens one day, and, very, very simple. I was going for simple, I was trying to keep it simple. And then a couple of references. I like that line, walk in the park instead of Central Park. One's a good thing, contrasting walk in the park with walk in Central Park at night. Kind of like those two.
Yeah. Now it's a walk in the park, not a walk through Central Park in the dead of night. Yeah. It's good. It goes against one of my rules, quote unquote rules, but rhyming the same word with the same word. But in this case, it's worth it.
Okay, you'll allow that.
In my opinion. No.
Yes. No, I get that. Yeah.
You actually built up the lyrics sort of after you came up basically with the riff of the melody, and then built the lyrics sort of around that.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the lyrics to the last thing, because I did come up with the verse, but the verse is very simple. Just that little piano. I'm not a piano player, but I can play that ding 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 ding. With that little. So that was a thing that that was a part that I had. I think before I coming up with the tune. So all my piano playing is very primitive.
But the line, suddenly everything's all right, came with the music at the same time.
Yeah, that was the dream thing. Suddenly everything's all right. I've still got the clip somewhere, with the bad recording.
Like a middle of the night recording.
Yeah. Do you get those, or do you ever get the moments? Yeah.
Phil, do you get those?
Yeah, and Once in a while, I actually do the smart thing and wake up and actually sing it. But other times, you'll go, "Oh, I'll remember it," and you won't remember it. You will not remember.
Oh, then there's times when you listen to the recording the next morning and you're singing it an octave lower, like A minor, D minor, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I sometimes come up with story ideas in the middle of the night, and I will, and I always think I'm wide awake, and I'll say, and then she walks to the door, and then she says hello, and then suddenly there's a birthday cake, and whatever it is, and then I listen to it the next day, and I'm like, oh my God, that's nutty. It's not always songs for me. Yeah.
Well, and of course, lyrics, because you start off often with lyrics.
Yeah, often.
First off, and then do them. Yeah, so it's... self-deprecatingly, I would say that's why my songs aren't so interesting musically. But, I think mostly they are, the ones I finish, I think by then I've put in the work musically. But the ones that I don't finish are songs that I've started lyrically, and they end up with a 2-note melody, and they're not that, they're not that good. But yeah, I do like to start with lyrics. So it's interesting to me that Greg started with the line, "Suddenly everything's all right," because that is like starting with a title. And then, as Greg said, working your way backwards. So you start thinking, well, what is this song going to be about? Suddenly, what's all right? As you say, it becomes a relationship. And then it's like, okay, but then suddenly is the operative word there. It's, because things weren't all right and now they are, but it's not like they became that way over 10 years or 5 years or whatever. They became that way suddenly. And I think, therefore, writing this kind of Phil Collins-esque take on Motown is perfect, because a lot of Motown songs are like that. They're about the moment, right? The moment when something happened. A lot of songs are about something really small that's made into a 3.5-minute song. Yeah. Some small little observation or some small feeling. And this is somebody, I think the person in the song is thinking, hey, yeah, I feel good, Which is actually not kind of song you would write in your 20s generally.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, like you have to have a certain amount of maturity to accept when things are good, because many people say, oh, if things are going too well, it's boring or something. Right. After a while, you're going, what? I've had enough crap in my life.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's take a listen to it, and we'll talk about it some more.
Great.
You took forever to find. You were hiding in plain sight. I kept on walking on by. I knew I had to make it to you. If I had to cross quicksand, if I had to cross time. Nowadays I think about you, don't know how I live without you. Suddenly everything's alright. It's like I had a premonition, following my intuition. Suddenly everything's alright. Now it's a walk in the park, not a walk through Central Park in the dead of night. And now I got you on my arm. I'm so tired of my shadow always hanging around. And I'm so glad I found you, baby. Nowadays I think about you, don't know what I did without you. Suddenly everything's alright. It's like I had a premonition, following my intuition. Suddenly everything's alright. It's alright. It's alright. It's alright.
Nice.
Oh, brilliant.
Thank you.
I wanted to call attention to a really effective technique of bringing contrast between the verse and the chorus, and of course that is by changing the rhythm. Your verses were da 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 da, da, like lots of space between them, and very consistent all the way through. And then your chorus is, the change. It picks up the pace. The rhythm really changes, and it helps the chorus pop without having to use like big, big guitars or big sort of, not even a huge musical change. It was just the rhythm, and it's so effective because it's so chorusy, and it just picks it up. But there's like an energy buildup, which is what you want in a chorus, but it's not, done with lots of instrumentation, which is really cool.
Okay. No, thanks.
We were talking about, we did sort of a deep dive into This Guy's in Love by Burt Bacharach, which is...
Oh, yeah. This Guy's in Love.
Which after listening to it a bunch of times, I realized how crappy the chorus is. Because there is no chorus, really. It's actually the dullest thing. It actually sounds like it's something that someone would write down, go, okay, well, I'll fix that later, and he never did. And the way they make it a big chorus is just by like orchestration, by putting all these chords on it and stuff. This is it's so great, and I love the last line of the bridge with that musical change, with a melodic change at the last of the bridge in the
that part there.
Yeah, that is so sweet.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, What do you think, Blair?
Yeah, I agree. I love the picking up of the pace without, choruses are often, not always, of course, but they're often longer notes, Suddenly everything's all right. It's just like, no, don't do that. So nowadays I think about you, it's great. It doubles up the pace in a beautiful way. And, and really announces this is the chorus. So it works for me.
You're right about that, because I hadn't really thought about that. People tend to do verse, short notes, and then the chorus is where you go longer, maybe, right?
Yeah.
In a way, it's kind of reversed, which I haven't really thought about. So
obviously, courses. What I don't like is when songwriters rely on the production or the arrangement to announce the chorus. I feel like put it in the writing. Change the chords, change the pacing of the melody. I just think that that's a cooler thing to do. But again, people do it all kinds of different ways, and whatever works that ends up moving people works for me. Yeah. I'm curious, not a songwriting question, but are those live drums?
Yes. Well, actually, it has some sample drums added. It's Troy Fina playing drums.
Beautiful drummer.
But I did combine samples with the kick and snare just to keep it up a bit.
And does he do recordings in his house like so many others now?
That was done. I'll tell you how long ago this song's been out. I was going to do a full album in 2020. That was the plan, and everybody knows what happened. Yeah. So I was getting Troy to do all the drums in his home studio, he's in a small basement without much room sound, so I had to kind of try and add some room sound to it and enhance it. But yeah, he did all that and sent me the stems,
right?
And then everything else was parts that I did and added to that.
Right. And do you do all the parts first and then send it to him, like to MIDI drums or clicks?
I think I just did a rough track. Yeah, I used Superior Drummer and did the track that I wanted, and as close as I could. I did have some things I said, I really want to have this, can we keep this in? But do your own fills and change things around.
I do that, and people who aren't songwriters and aren't producing their own recordings might be appalled, because they would rather, I think most people would rather imagine there's a band and there's a singer and they're all playing together and they're having a great time, and then they're going to have snacks after or whatever. But I think the reality is now, particularly in a post-COVID world, is most great drummers I know have a setup in their house where they can record drums, and So you can get them without, if you were going into a studio, you might have to pay, let's say $1,000 for the day in the studio, and you'd have to pay the drummer. And of course, if you're going in the studio, you might as well have other musicians as well. So it ends up being a $3,500 or $4,000 day. But if you do it the way you and I were describing it, it ends up being a $200 day or a $250 day or something like that. I did a song that I had 3 different drummers on because I didn't like what the first guy did except for the bridge. I really liked the bridge, but then I thought, well, I've got a little money left. So I had somebody else play a full track in case I liked his bridge better, but I didn't. So then there was a third guy who played it just so, and I loved it. It was sort of an Elvis Costello-y thing. So I wanted it to be like Pete Thomas, but I kept the bridge and the intro from the second guy and the bridge from the first guy. And you could never do that in the olden days, so to have it suddenly shift and yet it all sounded like it was one drummer, just different sounds was really cool.
Now, if for people out there who are wanting to do this, you would actually play to a click. And my favorite kind of recording is when you do have a whole band coming in and doing it at once, because I don't like clicks, and I like when stuff speeds up and slows down a bit. That's that's my own bugaboo. But it's everything I do is consistent because I do MIDI drums like so many people, and I've tried a couple of times to get drummers to play on it. If you do this, how do you communicate sort of the sections of Greg, when you're sending this off to the drummer? How are you communicating what you want to the drummer? Do you play the song over the phone with them and talk to them? Or?
I did actually program drums for this song. So I did send him a track of how I envisioned it. I suppose I was being a little pushy, but I think I even sped it up actually, because it was too slow. I sped up the whole track. So I sent him the one that was too slow, and I sped his track up. I actually time stretched the whole thing afterwards. Because I was listening to I was listening to like Sugar Pie Honey Bunch and all these other songs, and just trying to get the Motown tempo, and some of them were too slow. And I was really picky about where it sits, and if it's slightly slower, if it's slightly faster, it doesn't quite fit. But I did have a vision of how I wanted it. The double time in the chorus. But I said, do your own fills. He's got some really nice drum diddling, a few of those things that were his own. So it was a mixture, really.
And how did you find him?
Oh, through originally from playing with classical albums live for years. Russell as well. Russell, the guitar player, who didn't play on the recording, but only because of time restraints when we were doing it. And then Troy, and we play live. We play this song live as well, with a 5-piece with Alistair, of course, Alistair Bradley, who
from Song Studio.
Yes, and Kevin Adamson on bass.
Oh, what a great player! On bass.
Fantastic. Yeah, I know. He's not even playing keyboards. He's playing bass. Yes,
that's amazing. And you're a great bass player too. So that's great. That's high praise.
We have a band of just bass players or just keyboard players.
Right. Yeah. Phil, the thing that I found that's amazing is, short of Ringo, you can probably get almost anybody to record. It's just the price goes up depending on who it is. But people are interested in making music, and if they have a setup in their basement with decent microphones and so forth, not their basement necessarily, but in their house, they'll like the guy that I work with a lot is Mark Mariash. Have you ever worked with him, Greg?
I know him, but
lovely guy.
I don't think I've done any actual playing, like recording with him.
He built a geodesic dome on his property. I think it's outside of Elora, somewhere like that, near Guelph. And he built a geodesic dome, which you'd think wouldn't sound good, but he's treated it so that it does. And he's got some great preamps and stuff like that. And he's recorded a bunch of things. And he always gives me 3 takes and tells me which one he favors, but you might like the intro from this one better or whatever. He's really great. And
what's his dome? I'm not familiar with this dome that you're talking about.
Well, do you know the geodesic dome?
Is it an audio setup? Like a
No, it's a building. Look it up. It's designed. It was originally designed by Buckminster Fuller, and it's a type of building. It's where I think they're tetrahedrons. I don't know, but they all fit together, and it ends up making a dome. It's pretty interesting. So he just wanted to have an interesting building. I don't think it was for the purpose of having a recording studio. But then when he did set up his studio in it, you'd think it would sound terrible just because it's a dome. You know, how could a dome sound good? But the way he baffled it off and so forth, it really sounds good.
Yeah.
So
when you hire these drummers, can you give people an idea of sort of the range of costs that they could expect to pay?
I don't want to give anything away myself, but I would say the range would be 150 to 250 a song.
Okay.
So I don't want to be specific about who charges what.
No, of course.
Greg, without forgetting that we named your drummer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's. I think I paid 500 for a few. I can't remember how many songs, but you know, it was because it was the same session. So I think I did three or four.
Right. And it's a bargain by any standard.
Oh, yeah.
You know, especially, I mean, some of the fantastic drummers I've been able to work with, they're so great. And even if somebody's not great for a particular song, it doesn't mean they're not great. It just means that particular song, they had a different take on it than I did. And, you know, maybe I wanted a different snare sound or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Of course, you can actually replace all those in MIDI. But if you are working on demos at home, you know, having real live drums can make a real difference. It just brings so much energy to it, you know.
Yeah.
So something to think about, maybe not for every song you do, but if you have a special song that you feel especially strong about, it can be something worthwhile. Or you could just do, maybe we'll start up a list on the site of drummers who want to do this. And, you know, so people can go to the site and find someone to work with.
Mm.
So, Greg, did you play all the instruments on here, or you had other people playing, or?
No, I did everything else. Yeah, I mean the piano playing is pretty primitive, so I was able to do that and quantize thing. But yeah, I played bass, Rickenbacker 12-string, no acoustic on that actually, and then I layered the vocals quite a bit. There's about 12 or 13 voices, I think, in the last chorus. I was just getting this kind of airy sound, just keep, you know, rah, you know, stacking them, doing my Beach Boys thing.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, it was a fun project to keep adding to.
And those it's all right. It's something that's not done very much anymore, which is really nice. It's
the word "it's all right." I was thinking, well, the Beatles did it. You know, it's gonna be all right. You know, I was thinking, has it been done too much? But maybe it hasn't been done for a while. You know.
Well, I think it's probably fell out of fashion as well. But yeah. I definitely appreciated the guitar on the 2 and the 4, which is a big.
The little juke. Yeah. It was right on the snare. Yeah, I was trying to nail it right when the snare hits, you know, to get that kind of combination of the
R&B sound. Yeah.
Of course, and there was usually like 3 guitars on most of those Motown songs too.
That's right. I didn't. You know, when I listened to Sugar by Honey Bunch, that was the one. You know, I just realized how well the record. It's funny. The recording is not as what's the word? It's a good recording, but it's not as tight as your memory thinks it is. It's pretty loose. You know, like they're not totally together. It's little. You know, it's got all these idiosyncrasies. So I didn't capture that rawness so much. Mine's a little more rigid, you know. But I was going for the vibe, the instrumental vibe more, I guess. Yeah.
I went through a period of really, you know, going through all the old Motown stuff and trying to replicate some of those sounds. And when you listen to them with attention to detail, they were actually really pushing the envelope. There's like a lot. They were like distorting the drums. You know, they're pushing stuff. There was like it's not quite as soft, I think, as people think they are at first. They were actually quite. I mean, they really were pushing the envelope at that time. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting when it's just music that you listen to in the background for years and years, you know, and then suddenly you go and analyze it, and it's like, this is, like you say, grittier or distorted or something, and you hadn't never noticed it.
And the production is so not loose, but so raw. Like everything now is very clean and very crisp because the way we record. Where like the stuff was there was so much bleed through everything. It was
and it was all done. It was done live. But in one take, or spliced takes. But you had to put up with noise in the room or one little mistake, or I always think of the trumpet and When a Man Loves a Woman. This is like one really bad,
so bad that one.
Right? Yeah, and it's like I bet the guy's going, I wish I could think,
Meanwhile, it becomes a huge hit.
Yeah, it still became a hit. So who cares, right?
Because it was the impassioned vocal and the message of the lyric. That would be my argument. It wasn't the trumpet that sold it. The trumpet helped, but it was Percy Sledge and his voice and the lyric.
Exactly. And maybe I should have put some deliberate, errors in there.
Well, I would also argue it wasn't the mistake that made it a hit.
No, that's true.
No.
If that was the case, it would be much easier.
Yeah, well, exactly. I'd be a multimillionaire if that was.
Well, there was a famous Motown song where James Jamerson was playing the wrong notes for the first verse all the way through. He was playing in minor and it was major, so it wasn't huge, but he was hitting the thirds pretty heavy.
Right. That's amazing.
But back then things didn't come out quite as much.
Greg, I see a hand that keeps coming in the door.
I'm just over at my brother's place. It's actually my birthday today, so
it is.
Happy birthday!
Fantastic. So that's why the great shirt.
Oh yes, I had to wear a colorful shirt for my birthday.
Your birthday shirt,
of course. Well, happy birthday!
That's lovely. So, are you over at your brother's for like birthday dinner or something?
Yeah, we just had somebody, and I said I have to go off to do this, but it was by my own choice. I said I have to go off and do this little interview.
Yeah. That's.
Phil
will send you a cake from.
Yes. All the way from New Zealand.
I'll save you some birthday cake from today as well. I'll send you
please do.
Okay.
So, Greg, what are your plans for this song? What are you going to be doing with it?
Well, first of all, putting it on all the streaming services and playing it live. I need to do a video, which is I'm still working on a video for the last song. I want to get it out onto YouTube and eventually on a physical album. My plan is to do 10 songs, I think, like a lot of people do, and then at the end of it, create a physical album at the end of it.
Right.
But, I don't know where all the things that are going to come up to that will present themselves yet. It's when it's like it feels like a madness one man need sometimes, trying to do all these things, promoting and playing and keeping writing, so it's a lot of multitasking.
I agree.
So I could say it's a vanity project in some ways because I want to do it. That's the motivator. If it maybe it'll catch on Spotify, maybe somebody will stream it a million times, I don't know. So
a technique that's a lot of people have been doing is taking a short bit of your song, like the chorus or the bridge or some part that's kind of neat, and making a short TikTok out of it. Yeah. And actually sometimes taking their song and cutting up into different pieces and making multiple TikToks to it. And I think with TikTok, it's a little bit sort of like you just put stuff out there and see what kind of sticks, because there's so much out there.
Well, it's funny you said it, because I'm on TikTok and I have been putting it on there, and I had the most success. I did a cover of Sultans of Swing on there, and I managed 5.8 million views on that.
Wow.
Which got me 20,000 subscribers. And I thought, great, but now I'm putting my own stuff on and I'm only getting in the hundreds, so it's so hard to go, to rival. Hang on.
Okay. Okay. We're not fancy here. That's great.
Yeah, that is the frustration, though. I guess you do a cover, and you get all that attention, and then doing your
Yeah.
own.
And then, so I'm trying to find how to replicate that, with my own writing, but it remains to be seen how. Yeah, I mean that's what they say, do a cover, get the attention, and then present your own stuff. But then it's got to be similar,
right.
I suppose. And well, this isn't like Sultans of Swing, so so what do you do? Yeah. There's the dilemma. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Greg, because I think that's all the time we have here on Song Talk Radio. Greg, where can people get more of you?
Well, I'm on gregwyard.com, and my name after Instagram /Greg Wyard, YouTube at Greg Wyard, Facebook, Greg Wyard Music. So all those places I'm available, and Spotify. Starting July 28th, this song will be available. So
nice.
And could you spell your last name?
It's Wyard. It's like yard with a W in front.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, don't forget to stop by the website at songtalk.ca to find past shows, find out how you can be a guest. And don't forget about the Songwriting Challenge of 2023. And get your songs in so we can include them in the upcoming show. And my monitor just died. Anyways, Blair, how can people get more of your good stuff?
Well, I've got my website, blairpackham.com, but I'm also the real Blair Omatic at Instagram, and I'm on Twitter, and I'm pretty easy to find, I think.
Yes. All right, and don't forget that we want to hear from you, the listener, on any subject, so send us an email at feedback@songtalk.ca. And if you happen to be in the Toronto region, you can join us for the next Song Talk meetup. Now happening live in Toronto. Stop by the website for a link. And every other time we do it on Zoom, so you can join us on Zoom. It's free to attend and a great way of networking with other people. You can find links to all the books and resources we mentioned here on the show on the resources page. And yes, join us for the Songwriters Meetup. It's on live and in person. You can get more of Neil at neilmodi.com. You can get more of me at philemery.ca. And Blair, what's your thing one more time?
My website, blairpackham.com, and also on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok probably. I don't remember. The real Blair-O-Matic, I think, is the get with it.
All right. Greg, what's your favorite social media channel?
Favorite social media channel? Just because I've been spending more time on TikTok, I'm going to say that. I don't like everything that's on there, but there's some great music I found on there.
Thanks so much, Greg. And please stop by the website at songtalk.ca to browse past shows. Find out how you can be a guest. Thanks for listening, everyone, and keep on writing. That's, yeah. Well, something like that.
Keep practicing the writing.
Yeah. Keep on writing.
Keep on practicing endings.